Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Alexandra Saavedra to this episode of the Marketing Mavens podcast. Alexandra's led a very eclectic and cosmopolitan life and career. She has family roots in Peru and attended high school there before coming to the US to earn her bachelor's degree in political science from Santa Clara U. After graduating, she embarked on an inspiring career journey that had her crossing the Atlantic and changing continents again. She worked in Switzerland supporting government events and foreign aid projects before finding an opportunity at the University of Geneva as their social media officer. And this is where she really began to get her feet wet in the world of digital B2B marketing. Alexandra then held social media and digital marketing management roles in Portland, Oregon, and back again in Peru for various organizations before finally settling in to Miami, Florida. And this is where she joined the agency BCV and was introduced to the world of agency marketing. And that gave her incredible exposure to the hospitality industry and other B2B sectors. And this would come into play in the near term for her. After a year at BCV, she felt her experience was in the right place to start her own venture and took a big leap of faith to create SaaV Media. She grew that to over 15 recurring clients and 6 employees worldwide. She completed great work for her clients, and as is the case with many agency leaders, her clients loved her. And one of them, Achronix, wanted to have her talent all to themselves. So in 2021, they made her an offer to join full time, and she thoughtfully accepted that. So she's presently the Senior Marketing Communications Manager for Achronix. So Alexandra, I'm truly excited to hear from you and learn the ways that your expertise in B2B marketing for other industries has translated into success for you in the semiconductor industry. Without any further ado, welcome.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to speak with you today.
I think a lot of us in marketing have early memories of becoming aware the impact that marketing has on us. I don't know if that's been your experience, but if you can think of one, what's your earliest memory of marketing making an impact on you?
I love this question, and I'm going to give such a silly response, but I think it will resonate with a lot of people. So I love marketing, especially when you don't know you're being marketed to. I don't mean that in a manipulative sense. I mean it in the purest sense of you feel something and you have an emotion, or you're so joyfully entertained that you don't even realize that you're being marketed to. And the earliest memory I have of this is on Cartoon Network with PB&J show, which I don't know what marketers were behind the scenes with Cartoon Network to just keep, the industry of PB&J going strong. But I had literally such a ritual and a tradition of having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when I was little with orange juice, which was really weird, while I was watching the show. And, it's the purest of shows. They're not even necessarily tied to a specific brand, but it was really keeping the idea of eating a peanut butter and jelly top of mind. And I religiously did that while watching the show as a child for years, I would say. So I think that is one of my favorite memories looking back of when I was being marketed to and I didn't even realize. And that has stuck with me so much through the years of marketing is not about selling, and it's not about being so direct about what it is that you're marketing. It's about evoking emotion and about an experience. And that is just kind of in my roots.
I can tell that made a real salient impression on you as a young person, and that lasts today, the way you told that story so vividly. Can you kind of lead us into an overview of your career journey thus far? And, in particular, if you want to highlight any relationships or even decisions that ultimately led you to your role as a senior marketing comm manager at Achronix.
Absolutely. So I think it was interesting listening to the introduction and kind of hearing all of the different corners and angles that I've come at. I've been on the agency side, on the brand side. I've been in the private sector, in the public sector, and then across 3 different continents. So I've had so many wonderful experiences, and they've definitely all led me to the marketing path that I am on today, and especially being focused in B2B. So I think I'm one of those examples that you don't need to have studied marketing to end up in marketing. I studied political science. I thought I was going to be, who I know today as Amal Clooney in human rights at The Hague. That was kind of my dream in international relations. So a family friend introduced me to the headquarters of the Red Cross and got me this wonderful internship. And I was meant to shadow 6 executives on the international relations team about how to communicate the Red Cross's policy to the country offices on the field. And they were really trying to figure out, how do we communicate this in real time faster? And I humbly recommended that they discover Twitter, and we start a Twitter account. And this was, mind you, in 2012. So let me set the context that this was somewhat new to them. So we started the official IFRC policy account. We actually got that handle, and I built out a content calendar for them. And again, remember, I had not studied marketing. This just was something that kind of innately came to me. Of, you're looking for a way to communicate quickly, I recommended Twitter, and then they sort of set me with the task of figuring out how to roll this out. And that's really where I think I leaned into this role of the marketer that was within, and I truly felt like it chose me. So even though I was in the context of a political science and an international relations background, and in this opportunity, I was really gravitating towards vehicles of communication, how to achieve some of those marketing goals. And our Twitter account really took off. So it was such a positive experience. And that's ultimately the catalyst that I ended up as a marketer, if you will. I will say, with, a heavy heart, that it was not the best experience on I would say, public sector side of things. And so when I came back to the States after such a wonderful time in Geneva, I did decide to go to the private sector, and I just ended up in my next gig in a marketing role. So ever since then, I've been doing marketing, constantly choosing it, being excited by it. Every day is a new challenge, going from the agency side to the brand side, seeing all different angles, and ultimately ending up in a B2B company in the semiconductor industry. So with that, I'll stop and kind of let you go from there.
Was there a particular moment or period in your life when you had that revelation? I want to be a marketer. That's my career path. It sounds like your exposure to that first opportunity in the government sector was it.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, I think part of my reasoning for saying that it wasn't, with a heavy heart, it wasn't the best experience of my life, was seeing how slowly things moved at that time in that sector. And I was at the Mecca. I was at the helm of everything. And I really went there with a lot of fire in my eyes. And I came back with a little bit of a wake up call of how quickly things actually do move. And I saw that I could have a bigger impact on the private side, and specifically in marketing. So figuring out how to communicate quickly, how to take business goals and, launch awareness campaigns, and really communicate with your end user. So that's where my passion was sparked, and I just continued to choose that throughout my career.
Well, I think that makes a great segue to this next question, because your experience in that government sector and then transitioning into the private sector is one element of your background. You've got a multicultural background. You're very well traveled. In what ways do you feel like those are advantages to you as a marketing leader?
That's such a great question, and I loved reflecting on this. I would say it's the different perspectives, because when we look at marketing campaigns of any brand, B2B, B2C, it's really understanding the different angles, how things can be interpreted, how things can be received. And the more experiences and the more perspectives you have, the richer it can be. Not only because you're trying to avoid, of course, any mishaps or offending anybody, but really enriching it and understanding what's big in Brazil right now. What are the top marketing campaigns from last year in Brazil or in India? Or having all of these different enriching perspectives, because we are such, especially in the US, such a multicultural environment, and we all have different histories, we all have different traditions, so many cultures that we're pulling from. So I'm so lucky and so grateful that I've had such an opportunity to see the world and to really live in different cultures and environments, because I think that as a marketer, it just enriches my perspective. It helps me bring different angles and considerations to any brainstorm that we're doing at the ideation stage of any marketing campaign. We can't see it all. We can't foresee everything that's going to happen when we press launch on anything, but anything we can do to further expose ourselves and have more experiences will enrich the end product tenfold.
You went from overseeing large accounts for a marketing agency to starting your own marketing agency. Tell us about that pivot. Why did you make that shift?
So this was really a personal motivation, and I kind of love it because I started the whole remote thing before remote was cool. So for personal reasons, I really needed to be flexible in my living situation. I was very focused on a dear family friend who needed some medical help, and I just couldn't be tied to one place, let alone an office chair at a specific office. And that was hard for me because, I was younger and really in a moment where I was hungry to grow my career. But I just leaned into it, and I looked at, I have so much to give from a marketing perspective. I had already been on the agency side and on the brand side. So I'd had all of those different perspectives. I'd worked in so many brands and so many industries, and I really thought that I could bring this to different clients. So I decided I would start SaaV Media Co., which is a play on words of my last name. And I sent out a blanket mass email to my entire Gmail contacts. I don't even know why that came to me, but I thought, well, you have to start somewhere. And I just announced that I was starting this if anybody needed any marketing consulting. And it was really interesting to see the different people that came out of the woodwork, either friends and family who wanted to have a conversation with me, or people who said they knew somebody and connected me. That was so empowering because I had no idea when I sent that first email blast through MailChimp what was going to happen. And the response was really exciting. I had some different industries, from the food and beverage industry to, my first client was actually Achronix. And that was about, oh gosh, 7 years ago. So I think that it is really interesting when you lean into, or you really think out of the box, and you have had such a fruitful career, that you have so much to give, and there are so many people out there who need support with marketing. So it was very empowering, a little scary, very exciting, and Achronix was my first client.
It's an incredible founder's journey. And I think that the way that you talk about reaching out proactively to your network without that expectation of anything happening, and the way that you were received and kind of rewarded is really an encouragement to others who might be looking up to you and wanting to model their next step. Would it be fair to say, don't hesitate, just take that step and get to it?
Yes, absolutely. Do not hesitate. And again, if nobody had responded, at least I started somewhere. Or if I got one client out of it, I think you really need to set expectations that you're doing this authentically and you're putting something out there. It's kind of, up to the universe what will happen. The one piece of advice I would give is, once you do tap into that network, these are family and friends. It's almost like a startup when you do the first series with family and friends. If you take their money, it's kind of the same sense. And so I would say, really do that when you're ready to follow through, and you have your professional ducks in a row, that you can, keep up with communication, give a professional experience. So once you put yourself out there, just make sure that you're in a space and organized enough that you can really follow through and put your best foot forward, because the friends and family are going to be the first ones that lend a helping hand, and it's going to be your first impression into that world, and you really want to be ready and put your best foot forward.
Great advice. Could you share about your most memorable success story for a client when you owned and operated SaaV Media?
So this was actually one with Achronix, because I started their LinkedIn from almost nothing, and I really kind of opened them to the idea that this is, again, kind of before it was cool. This was about 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. That this is really where the B2B people are, and so this is where you want to make your mark, much more than, you say, a Facebook page, or even Twitter in that moment. And this was little bit cutting edge then. And even the ad platform wasn't where it is today. And we really started from, I think when I took over the page, we had a few hundred followers, and now we're almost at 30,000. So I think that that's one of the biggest case studies I personally have, that I've touched from start to finish after so many years, that I can say consistency wins. Keeping up with the platform and understanding all of the new functionalities wins, making the business case, but also finding some champions internally to give you some support and some buy-in when maybe not everyone kind of gets it, if you will. And then, of course, you get the leadership question of, well, what's the ROI if we're going to be investing time and resources into LinkedIn? It's a really difficult question to answer, especially if we're rewinding 5 to 6 years ago, of how do you explain, your audience, and you can figure out the platform that yeah, it's a little bit of a bet, but it's a calculated bet. You think that you can grow with that community on that platform. I think if you're consistent and steady Eddie in the long term, you win the race essentially.
Thanks for the insights on that. And very exciting that your first client as your own entity is the company that you ended up joining, and you've been able to carry the success into and grow and expand upon that. Pivoting a little bit, have you created any strategies in the B2C realm that you have seen translating well into the B2B realm?
This is my favorite question today because yes, and I cannot talk to enough. If I could get a megaphone for all B2Bs out there, we are all B2C in our everyday life. We are all B2C. That's how we engage with the world is B2C because we all have an Amazon account or we have a PayPal account or we are Apple consumers or this is how we live and breathe every day and that's growing so fast. We are now expecting this in our B2B communications. No longer can we justify that B2Bs are staying behind so many years in their user experiences. So, whenever I look at whether it's our website or our social media channels or our customer service, I think so many times now people are coming to the table not differentiating if you're a B2B or you're a B2C. They just want the same seamless user experience across the board. We all have the same frustrations. We all want the same seamlessness to our experiences on a daily basis. Of course, in a B2B, and especially in the semiconductor space, you're going to have much longer sales cycles. There's going to be a different nature to how you engage with the brand, but that doesn't mean that the touch points and that experience has to change and that seamlessness needs to be there. So I think more often than not, we need to draw from the B2C world to say, how can we streamline or how can we even delight, if you will, and I'm saying this coming from the semiconductor industry, um, our users into wanting to work with us and to wanting to be a part of our brand. I don't think there should be as much differentiation between the two as sometimes people on the B2B side tend to think there is.
Exceptionally strong insights. I appreciate everything you just shared, and that's exciting to hear as a fellow marketer. One of the things that you brought up that really caught my attention was when you started to talk about experience and brand. What are some of the ways that marketing in the semiconductor industry is very different from marketing in other industries, whether B2B or B2C?
So for me, it's really about getting into the mind of the consumer. And I will be the first to say I do not have a technical background. I am not an engineer, but I have to figure out the mind of an engineer almost on a daily basis. And one of my favorite places that I've gone to and learned so much from, and I'm overgeneralizing here, but I think it's a good example, is Reddit. You have peers coming onto the platform, workshopping, brainstorming, asking questions, asking for solutions. And me as a marketer, I'm able to go in and see what are some of the pain points with the engineers? What are some of the common questions with the engineers? This has been such a fruitful place to dictate and help me inform what should my content strategy be, how do they think, but it also helps me understand the verbiage that they use, how they formulate some of their messaging, and how they think. And so for me as a marketer, really understanding how to speak to them and on what terms is such good insight for me to personalize any of the marketing campaigns that I then go and launch. And I think this is something that understanding what the consumer or your target audience, what do they consume on a daily basis, what do they enjoy, what do they find funny. We've all done our persona profiles, but that's really something we should be doing on a daily basis. And I think that goes at the core of your question is, for me, it's how do I get into the mind of an engineer and make their life easier but also speak on their terms. And it was interesting. I'll give a really specific example. I'm a huge fan of Typeform. I'm a personal believer in it. I love quizzes. I love surveys. I think that if a brand can get that information out of me and I'm just kind of innately inspired to answer the questions, then it's a win-win situation on both sides. I feel like they're listening to me and they're getting a ton of information for free. And that's something that I was thinking about for our website with our target audience is how can we get a type form? So, because especially with the product that I use, I really need to understand your very specific case scenario that you're going to use us for. And that's hard to do with a one size fits all form. So I was thinking of Typeform. I got the insights from some engineers that engineers do not want to sit there and go through a Typeform questionnaire where they don't know how many questions there's going to be and they're not sure where their information is going. And so even just understanding that nuance of, I thought in my everyday life, Typeform is such a great vehicle that doesn't maybe translate to, again, I'm generalizing here, that doesn't translate to the mind of an engineer. So I have to go do more due diligence to understand how can I make our communication process more seamless while still respecting the tendencies of my target audience.
That's such a great, clear, and powerful example of a subtlety that can make all the difference between a successful strategy or a failed one. So, shifting gears again, with the rise of so many new marketing tools powered by AI, what are some of the trends that you're seeing emerge in B2B marketing?
I'll focus on two. And I think the first is going back to what I was just speaking about, is that personalized, hi, I'm Alexandra. Here's what I'm working on right now. And I want to talk to somebody to understand how to make this better. And that is right now the crux of my issue as a client or consumer, and the brand's issue is, how do I make this easier for you? So I think that that's something, there's so many different approaches and different platforms that are coming up to try and facilitate that, but just really understanding, is this the right fit for my audience? And then also doing a lot of testing and trial and error. And I don't have an answer to that yet. That's actually one of my kind of biggest passion projects right now, is to figure out, how can I get to my target audience engineer? How do I do that while they're also feeling like they can get to me easily and quickly and communicate what they want? So I think there's a lot of things in the AI world that are going to help me do this. I don't have an answer yet, but that's kind of my first pillar that I would respond to. I think there's so much opportunity there. And then the second would be the analytics component. And in our GA4 world now, and I love the new Looker Studio. I think that's really great from a metrics perspective. But really understanding, I'm losing so many cookies right now and I'm losing so much information. So how can I really understand the user journey of, what can I scale up on my marketing initiatives that are working? And a lot of those are owned channels. Again, I'm very gung ho right now about my LinkedIn Live webinars, and we might talk about that in a future question. But this has been such a great way for me to do something that my brand is launching. I have full control over. I don't depend on anyone else, and I'm getting the leads directly. And I'm able to really see very quickly if somebody came to me from that and how successful they are. So, as much as we can have control over these things and then have the metrics in place to see what's working and scale up from there, that's going to be so important. And I know AI is going to play a huge role in that.
Well, and I think you've kind of touched on this in the response you just gave, but what advice would you give to marketers and or their leaders who are looking to take their team's performance to the next level, given all these evolutions that are happening right now?
Again, I have a two-part answer to this. So the first is, be technical. And if you are not a technical marketer, I'm sorry, you need to go do some certificates or some training programs, or go nerd out with some of your more technical marketing friends. But we can no longer be one thing. We need to have the technical side of this and understanding, how do we set up events? How do we set up pixels? How do we go into the back end? How do we do really methodical A/B testing with our ad campaigns, and really understanding the technicalities of each platform? As technical as you can be as a marketer, while also bringing that creative perspective, you are going to be such a powerhouse. And if that scares you, I would just say, lean into it, and education is your friend. There's so many free trainings out there that just take the time to really roll up your sleeves and get technical. My second thing would be, how do you, because at the end of every day, whether you are a big company or you're a startup, the leadership is going to say, what is my ROI on marketing? So being able to understand as a marketer, I understand the business objectives for this year, and here's what I'm going to do to achieve those business objectives. Here's my cost per lead, click, sale, whatever it is. And here's more or less my calculated, estimated to the best of my ability, how much ROI you're going to get back on the investment in marketing. As soon as you can figure out how to speak in those terms, you are going to rise up in your company.
Again, incredible insight. If I can summarize, it would be or become more technical and understand the inner workings or the behind the scenes of how your marketing is actually working across the different properties, platforms, channels, and then also to be able to clearly draw that line of connectivity through all those activities to the outcome and share that transparently with leadership. Now, would you also say share regularly, or how's your relationship with the feedback loop to executive leaders? Are you more proactive, reactive? I'm curious.
So it's something that I've been getting more and more comfortable with. I think because I was a little bit of a fish out of water, specifically in the industry I'm in now, in semiconductor industry. I probably played a more passive role my first year. My second year, I'm much more comfortable. I've kind of, gotten through the learning curve, and I am as proactive as I can be. Quarterly seems to be the sweet spot for them. So I make sure that I understand how best they want to receive that information, and I try and wrap it with a bow every quarter.
I'd summarize that by aligning with and understanding what leadership is looking for and being or becoming more proactive with that feedback loop. That's awesome. Great insight. As we kind of round the bend here, see the finish line of our conversation is I'm curious, is there another marketer whose work you pay attention to, and what is it about their work that really gets your attention?
So I'm going to pivot this ever so slightly, and I'm going to do this because I have been, I will admit, when I first considered working at Achronix, it was after the pandemic, and they had become a little bit more comfortable with remote workers, which is not was not an option beforehand, before the pandemic. And when they came to me and said, would you consider coming on full time? I said, absolutely not. I have zero technical background. I don't even know how I would go into the semiconductor industry. I had such imposter syndrome that there was no way I was going to be able to do this job. And, my now boss, who I absolutely adore, he was so empowering, and he really said, that's why I'm coming to you. I want a different perspective on our team. And it's absolutely okay that you don't have a technical background. You're going to be the one marketing, so it's your job to go and figure out, how do you understand what we need to market, and then go and communicate that to other people. I thought that was so interesting. And so today I'm in the semiconductor industry, and I still consider myself very non-technical, but I've come a long way, and I love looking at the other, specifically women, in the industry that are, the Lisa Sue of AMD, Sandra, who just started the Altera spinoff from Intel, again, going back to its Altera roots. I really love watching these women and how they market themselves, and how they're also communicating the strategy of what they're doing in their respective businesses. And I'm able to draw so much from that. So I follow them personally on LinkedIn. I follow their marketing team's campaigns because I know that they're the leaders of these companies. And that has been so inspirational and empowering, and really helps me rise into my shoes that I have to fill every day.
It's a great response. Thank you for bringing the other leaders to my attention. Some of whom I'm familiar with, and others whom not so much. So, Alexandra, you mentioned earlier about the quarterly webinars that you've been doing, and you lit up about them. Obviously, you have a lot of passion. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's been going on with those?
So I'm laughing a little bit because I did not have internal buy-in on this project. So I will be honest, again, because I was new in this space. I would work with some of our vendors, and they would give me the price tag for what it would be to do joint webinars with them. And I completely understand that they're wonderful partners. They have huge audiences that they have also garnered and nurtured over many years. And we, as a B2B business, we want access to that audience. I understand. But I had such sticker shock on some of these webinar prices to do with our vendors, and I just couldn't accept it. I don't know why. And LinkedIn came out with their LinkedIn Live webinars, and I thought, this is essentially free for us as a business. Why don't we just try it and see what happens? I thought, I'm going to launch the first webinar. I'm going to get 5 attendees, because who wants to watch an Achronix webinar? And this is going to be a total fail. But I thought, It's not going to cost me anything, so why not try? We had 400 registrants who had to fill out a LinkedIn form. They gave me their email, they gave me their title, their company. It pulls from all of the in real time profile information that they have with LinkedIn to come to this webinar. And I had positioned it more in a thought leadership. I didn't pick like a clickbait topic, but I picked a topic that I knew was trendy right now. And I didn't do it in a way that we're pushing Achronix's products. I did it in more of a thought leadership way. And we ended up having, I think that attended about 80% of the registrants ended up attending. And we had an 80% stay on rate even through the hour. So I had no idea what was going to come from this first webinar that we did. And we ended up having, because I only had to use the webinar streaming platform that we pay for, we ended up having like a 30 cents per lead cost to us at the end of the day. And it was really great because we did have some potential customers in there. And so this ended up being something that we started doing quarterly. I've also started having guests come on and moderate from some of our media outlets, and I've been very pleasantly surprised at how many of them are open and excited to doing it for free and coming and having a conversation with some of our internal experts. So it's been this thing that kind of grew, and I had a lot of skepticism, and it's been really great. And I think thinking outside of the box, not getting comfortable with the status quo. I still do webinars with our vendors. They're so important to my strategy, and I will always be faithful with them. But I also think that adding on to and enriching our portfolio of webinars with these LinkedIn Lives has been absolutely amazing.
So exciting to hear how from humble beginnings and calculated risk has been such a success, and you're seeing it continue and adding to it all the time. Amazing. As we close out, I just want to thank you, Alexandra. You've been extremely generous with your time. Your insights have been really deep and detailed. I think they're going to help a lot of people and cause some who've been in the industry for a while maybe to rethink and refactor some of their approaches. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, or even a way that if somebody's heard something you shared in this conversation and they'd like to get in touch with you to learn more, they could reach out to you?
Absolutely. So please come connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. I'm a huge fan of the platform, both personally and, of course, in the B2B space. There's so many things to do with ads. If you have any questions, I love nerding out about it. So let's have a Zoom coffee, and I can talk your ear off about LinkedIn for B2B. So come find me on LinkedIn, Alexandra Saavedra. I work at Achronix Semiconductor. And thank you so much for having me. I would say my biggest piece of advice is don't get comfortable. Things are constantly changing. I'm a huge believer in experimenting, testing. No idea is a bad idea. So just kind of throw some paint at the wall and see what sticks. Do it calculatedly and make sure that you're testing it as you go. But that would be my advice.
Wise words to live by for any marketer. Thanks again for joining me. This has been really informative, Alexandra. I'm grateful you came on, and I hope it's not the last time we'll chat like this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to chat more.